about any of your operations, or just giggle every time I ask you a question?
Decline to answer because I honestly believe my answer might tend to incriminate me.
I thought only little girls giggled, Mr. Giancana.
Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden. Yes, I'm still fiddling with my earphones. I've got to get better earphones. There's no question about it. And thanks for watching. It's a snowy Sunday morning here in the Ottawa area. We're broadcasting to you live. This is Stand on Guard. The channel is KRAYDEN'S Right. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And we really do appreciate your support for this station. And we'll be right back with a lot more as we wrap up an entire week.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. Well, no. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
And we do it live every morning. Usually 10 o'clock. We're doing it at 9 this morning. Try to do it at 9 on Sundays. Give everybody an opportunity to go to church. Or if you choose your synagogue, your temple, your house of worship. Gives you a little more time. So it's been a very incredible week. And where are we now? We're at the beginning of the week. It's not really the beginning of the work week. This is why I do my wrap up on Sunday, because it includes what happened yesterday. By the way, I am in nobody's pocket. And I'll remain in nobody's pocket. Biggest news of the week has to be the arrest of the royal, formerly known as Prince Andrew. I hope you find it as funny as I do when I say that, because, of course, I'm thinking about the now deceased, the late Prince, the performer, the musician, the singer, who, of course, for a while decided he was going to be known by an Egyptian hieroglyphic that nobody knew how to pronounce because we don't know how Egyptian was spoken. We can read it, we can't speak it. So whenever he was introduced, it was the artist formerly known as Prince. I can still hear it at the Grammy Awards and whatnot. So that's what I'm calling Prince Andrew. So apparently, he had a bad day. He was released. Nothing about the potential allegations of sexual misconduct, but that he potentially was professionally wrong in his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein, and that he gave him, the allegation is he gave him intelligence which Epstein then handed to the Chinese. So that's a serious issue. He could spend the rest of his life in prison. He's what, a 66-year-old man now. So even if he doesn't get life. But I somehow doubt it's ever going to come to this, because people in the English establishment, the British establishment, are going to say, poor Andrew has suffered enough. And we don't really want to send him to prison for the rest of his life. I mean, after all, remember the days when he and Sarah Ferguson, the marriage that everybody was so impressed by? We all watched it just like we did Charles and Diana. Of course, he was a pilot in the Falklands War. Yeah. People want to remember the way things were rather than they actually are, or perhaps the way they actually were when Prince Andrew believed he could get away with anything. And the lesson of the Epstein files is apparently you can. Apparently you can. And we're going to be going into that a bit, because the Epstein files remain the story of the month, perhaps of the year. We know Trump administration is not exactly enthusiastic about releasing these files. It's only been at the insistence of Representative Thomas Massey, Republican, Kentucky. And I have to give credit where credit is due. Ro Khanna, Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat from California, that these files are at all seeing the light of day and that redactions in these files are being unredacted. Now, this is very important. I've been trying to get Whitney Webb, who was on Redacted last week. That's her first interview in probably 3 or 4 months. She's hiding out in Chile. I shouldn't say hiding out. She's not. Nobody is technically after her, but I'm sure there are forces out there who are not happy with Whitney Webb, and I'm sure that's why she's residing in Chile. I don't know that for a fact. I know she's super hard to get a hold of. I got her contact information from Clayton Morris of Redacted, and it's like as soon as I tried to contact her on that with that information, she was no longer using that particular vehicle, communications vehicle, to correspond with people. So I'm going to keep trying because somebody once asked me, actually, it was at the gym, and they had seen me on Redacted, and Whitney Webb had just been on Redacted, and this woman said to me, "Do you really know Whitney Webb?" Thinking because everybody, I guess, who appears on Redacted must know everybody else on Redacted. And I said, malheureusement, unfortunately, no, I don't, but I'd like to, and I'd like to have her on the show. But she had some interesting things to say this week about the Epstein files. And I think it's probably safe to say that now. Let's listen.
On a story on and off since 2023 that I'm actually about to release, but it was about this sheik who has now been noted as having been redacted by the DOJ, who was sending torture videos to Epstein. I was following that guy for a while, and then Drop Site published emails between them last fall, and now there's even more that are just extremely disturbing this time. So that really opens up that story even more, and I'm actually kind of glad that I ended up waiting a couple of years to publish it, just because it'll be more comprehensive now, because that's a story that really goes back to the Bush administration, and not a lot has been said about Epstein in his time at the Bush administration. Allegedly, the sweetheart deal, received approval from higher ups in the Bush administration. According to Nick Bryant, it was either former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales or it was George W. Bush himself. And if you look at that particular relationship, it was going on in the Bush administration and may have had a role in the Bushes wanting, or Gonzales potentially wanting to keep the heat, or help keep the heat off of Jeffrey Epstein.
I'm going to return to this in a minute, but I want to share my last Substack with you. Again, I've got to write another one. It's probably going to be about big events that are going to be happening at Universal Ostrich Farms, and I'm going to be talking about that later in the show. But I wrote 2 columns about this issue here, and she talks about a sheik or sheik. Pronunciation varies on that one. This is the Sultan she's talking about right here. This is the guy. And this is the Sultan that the Canadian government signed a trade deal with. He was the CEO of DP World, which stands for Dubai Ports World. And they own most of the ports in the world. And you can find it all in the Epstein files. And of course, the name of this Sultan, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. He's the one that sent a torture video, quote unquote, to Epstein, according to the Epstein files. And this, of course, has only been known because of Representative Thomas Massey's work. And he's also at the center of incredible correspondence like this. Sultan Epstein, right? Sultan wants to replace bionic dick with new Swiss version. Wants different surgeon. This is a Dr. Fish. Not making this up. Responds, you're joking, I hope. Epstein says, nope. So he's got, apparently, according to Epstein, according to these files, the Sultan had already received what is known as a bionic dick, which is a, shall we say, a fake penis, if I can say that. It's the male equivalent of a woman getting breast implants. Sometimes women get them for medical reasons because they have lost their breasts to surgery. Other times they get them for vanity reasons. They want larger boobs. And apparently men are doing the same thing. I had no idea this even existed. But this guy is at the center of all of this. Thomas Massey is the guy who insured. And I had to laugh. When this news broke, nobody's talking about this on social and except on social media. Oh my God, Canada just made a deal with that guy days ago. Yeah. Canada just made a deal with that guy. So I hope that explains what Whitney's talking about. Let's go back to Whitney for a minute here.
But there's a lot of things, and it's hard to cover them all because for a long time, it should have been pretty clear to people that have followed this case closely that there are a lot of different angles because Epstein had a lot of interest and directed money to a lot of different avenues. So one example is transhumanism. Another is his interest in eugenics. These are reflected in the emails that have been released, his interest in cryptocurrency and stable coins and Bitcoin, things of that nature. Really any other angle you want to talk about from, the period these emails cover is reflected in there. But what's interesting is that there aren't a lot of emails from the early 2000s when some of the stuff with the Bush administration that I'll be publishing a report on soon were going on. And it,
So that then later in the show, I find this amazing because I've reported about this Sultan, Sulayem, for the last week now. Nobody in the mainstream media in Canada is even mentioning it. Not a word yet. Why? And I've got an article going into Blaze Media. And I asked my editor the other day, why isn't this up yet? And he said, there's no problem here. We love your work. It's a great article, but we're just having our legal team look at it. And he says, shouldn't be a problem. But people are very, very hesitant about putting this material out there beyond social media. And I emphasize this, I can't say this enough. If we don't give this material the light of day, it will vanish. And it literally is vanishing off the internet right now. I've seen numerous reports that hundreds of thousands of files are vanishing. And all of the files related to the George W. Bush administration, we're talking early 2000s here and beyond, approximately 2000, 2008, everything relating to 9/11 has not been released or has disappeared. Are you worried about this? Are you concerned about it? I am. I'm very concerned that this information simply will not exist. It's going to disappear. Now let's listen to a little bit more of Whitney Webb because she's the one talking about the Sultan that I've been talking about all week. She doesn't mention the Canadian connection. I'm sure she's aware of it. Whitney has, on several occasions, totally eviscerated Prime Minister Mark Carney for his connections to the globalists, including Jeffrey Epstein. And we know he attended parties in the presence of Ghislaine Maxwell, who, of course, was the girlfriend, the confidant, the co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein. Carney's wife was very close to Ghislaine's sister, and they attended the same events at a farm outside of London when Mark Carney was the governor of the Bank of England. So I'm sick of hearing people say, oh, Mark Carney, 69 times mentioned in the Epstein files, but there's nothing there. Nonsense. dig a little deeper, find out why he's connected to the Sultan, Sulayem, find out why he's at these parties at the farm. These pictures were not doctored. They're not AI. And by the way, one citizen reporter had the gall, the audacity, and the courage to confront Mark Carney about those pictures. What was he doing on this farm? What is his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? That individual was totally crushed by the state apparatus. He's not even on YouTube. He will not return my phone calls. He used to be a frequent guest on my show. In fact, we had a weekly gig together on Friday. He would come on my show and we'd just yak about the news of the week. He's not doing that anymore. I'm going to keep trying to find out what happened to my friend. But clearly, this is an area you don't want to get into too intimately or they will punish you. Let's listen to a bit more, Whitney.
So, let's just talk about this. So Natalie wants to ask you about the Clintons, which we will, the upcoming depositions. We'll get there in a minute.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I want to follow up with you on the Sultan story because you said you've been working on that since like 2023 on bin Sulayem, who now has stepped down. Big ties with that Epstein scandal, obviously in Dubai, and their friendship there. So maybe we could dive more deeply into that. And then I also wanted to, there's a lot I want to talk about here. So, and any kind of
one question.
I know, I'm just sorry. There's so many people firing questions here in our chat room as too. So take the Sultan stuff here. What do we know about this guy? How dirty was he? And what was he involved with Epstein? Maybe you can unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away because I would like the article to come out because I like having my sources publicly available when I go out and publicly talk about stuff. But essentially, this was a guy that almost successfully took over every major port in the United States. And it was facilitated to the outrage of Congress by top people in the Bush administration, some of whom later engaged in the Epstein cover-up. And so if you've been following some of this recent reporting in the emails, of Epstein's relationship with this guy, they say the earliest they can date it to is 2006. There is photographic evidence it happened earlier at the time that this group was lobbying these top Bush officials to sign off on this movement. It was really an acquisition of the existing port operator by Dubai Ports World, which is what bin Sulayem was managing. And intimately involved in this is a guy that I was initially following and was a source of my article initially, which is Andrew Farkas, who's long been known as Andrew Cuomo's money man, as it were. And a lot has come out about his relationship with Epstein as well, but he's been a frequent business partner of this guy and connected him with Trump, for example, because with a DP World affiliated real estate firm, Trump did a lot of his Dubai-based and UAE-based building, including on the Palm Islands, which this guy ultimately controlled. And it gets crazier than that, if you can believe it. For example, Farkas has intimate ties to the missing HUD money that Catherine Austin Fitts has talked about at length for decades. It's pretty much provable that he was involved in siphoning a lot of it off, and then gets intimately involved with this particular network, including Epstein, who was a known money launderer for the Iran-Contra crowd. In this, shadow government of sorts. And then, as we know from the later releases, these were, they were very involved with Epstein's activities at the Virgin Islands. The Sheik helped him purchase his island when he normally wouldn't have been able to. This team of him and Farkas intimately involved in USVI stuff, even beyond Epstein, co-owned a marina with Epstein that he needed to to control in order to traffic girls to and from his island. And also, as I'll be reporting, a very disturbing proprietary telecom system that wouldn't have been accessible to anyone but them. So there's a lot of very disturbing things going on there. And I would add, too, that Andrew Farkas was listed as a reference by Jeffrey Epstein for one of his USVI companies, along with Jess Staley, which was apparently the jumping off point to investigate Jess Staley as part of this now settled court case between the USVI and JP Morgan. But if they went after Jess Staley for that, why didn't they go after Farkas when he was, listed in the same spot? Yeah. And I would argue it's because he is way too close. Farkas is way too close to top very high ranking figures in the Trump administration that are intimately involved in Middle Eastern affairs.
Right.
Right. So thank God for people like Whitney Webb. I'm still trying to get her on the show. I want to thank somebody here. I've been using this video all week, and it's really well done. And of course, it's another story of the week was the crossing of the floor of Matt Genero, a Edmonton conservative MP, who is now declaring his undying devotion, love, and gratitude to Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberal Party, because he said he was just so captivated by Mark Carney's speech at Davos at the World Economic Forum conference that all he can do now is just admit that Mark is the man. Mark is the man. So thank you to Red Pill on X for this. I've been using this all week, and I should have given you more credit.
I announced my resignation back in November, mostly family reasons, but honestly, I just couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore after seeing the Prime Minister's ambitious agenda across the country and across the world. And quite honestly, it was your Davos speech where you took everything head on. That's when I thought of the money.
Tonight, I couldn't be more happy to accept you. Excellent. Fantastic.
Okay, guys, thank you.
Yeah, and that was brilliant. Thank you again for using that. Here's another bit from the week here. This, of course, was the incredibly embarrassing moment from Rosemary Barton of CBC when she admitted they're making it up. It's all made up anyway. And this was another story.
Live in Ottawa. Minister of Industry Melanie Joly is speaking to reporters in Montreal. Let's listen.
It's just because it's all made up anyway.
Can't do that cackle. And that's not bad. And that's Rosemary, of course, who in another famous, shall we say, episode with Prime Minister Mark Carney, she was actually asking a few tough questions of the Prime Minister. And Carney said to her, look inside yourself, Rosemary, or Rosie. And I can't remember if it was Rosemary or Rosie. Look inside yourself. Oh, clearly. And of course, we have a trade negotiator, Janice Charette, who is scaring the hell out of a lot.
We actually, I think, have amongst the best trade negotiators in the world. And in fact, they've been described to me as ninja trade negotiators for Canada. We have managed to negotiate, trade agreements, 15 different trade agreements around the world.
Well, of course, those 15 different trade agreements are largely trade agreements initiated and completed by Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Remember him? Yeah, he was the conservative Prime Minister before Justin Trudeau. And Harper emphasized trade agreements because he really wanted to leave some kind of legacy. I think he could see what was going to happen. Now, God only knows why he appointed Mark Carney as governor of the Bank of Canada. I'll never understand that, and I'll never forgive him for that. But hey, overall, much, much better legacy than either Trudeau or Carney. But of course, here's what I say to Rosemary Barton's moment.
Every once in a while, a moment of truth.
And that, of course, is exactly it. I want to get to what's happening. Actually, before that, this was an incredible story, and I want to replay this from my good friend Dallas Brody, leader of the 1BC party, probably the only principal MLA left in the legislature of British Columbia. I'm going to have Dallas on the show next week to talk about this miscarriage of justice. Somebody's got to appeal this, and they are appealing it, but kangaroo courts, human rights tribunals should not have this kind of power to extract this kind of money from people.
Dallas Brody here. Wanted to let you know about another insane situation that's developed in BC. Barry Neufeld, who's a former trustee of the Chilliwack School Board, was found guilty today of not believing in transgenderism, and he has been fined, get ready, $750,000 for saying that he doesn't believe that there are more than two genders. Can you believe this? The tribunal found that he was guilty of existential denialism, and that's what it came down to. So this poor guy, $750,000. These human rights tribunals are out of control. They're kangaroo courts. They don't meet any of the traditional burdens of proof. It's outrageous that this is happening. If I were premier, these tribunals will be shut down immediately.
Right on. Speaking of denialism, I want to show you this again because the fallout from Tumbler Ridge continues. And we've got a column going up on Blaze Media about this. The RCMP has again failed the public. They put woke politics ahead of public safety. And you'll see what I mean when we watch this news report here.
RCMP have confirmed a total of 10 people are dead. That includes the suspect who died of a self-inflicted wound. 6 victims were found dead in the high school. 2 victims dead at a separate location. That location being a home. We're still trying to confirm exactly where. Police say 1 victim died en route to hospital. As for the injured, 2 victims were airlifted to hospital with serious injuries. 25 others were triaged, according to police, at the local medical center for non-life-threatening injuries. The backstory here, Tumbler Ridge RCMP got reports of an active shooter around 1:20 p.m. local time at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. The school was put on lockdown. We talked to a grade 9 student who said it was terrifying. They had to hide in a classroom for more than an hour before being released to a nearby community center. In fact, the entire community of nearly 2,000 people told to stay inside, businesses shut down for several hours.
And what does it say here? Be on the lookout. Suspect described as female in a dress with brown hair. This was a biological male, people. RCMP, once again, has failed public safety, just like they did at Universal Ostrich Farms, where they failed to charge the CFIA for obvious animal cruelty incidents. They failed to even stop them. And this, of course, is why there's big news about to happen at the farm. And I want to get to that right now. And here we go. I got to share the screen. Okay. This is Katie Pasidney's Facebook page because their neighbor has just sued the federal government, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and the RCMP. And why? Because these people totally invaded their property without any legal recourse, without any legal reason or any legal justification for doing it. So they're suing them. And this is the neighbor, of course, where they grew garlic. They weren't allowed to harvest the garlic. They had to go through security to go into their own home. The CFIA goons built a road on their property without any approval, any permission, without even asking. So they're going to sue the butt off these people. And so that was announced February 17th, last week. Guess what's happening imminently? As Katie writes here, Universal Ostrich Farms is next. It's all about the year of accountability and restoring strength in our future for our families and our food supply with our agricultural sector, proving that biosecurity and the law must coexist. We need to remember when enforcement shortcuts process, everyone becomes vulnerable. rise up, Katie Pesitney. Now that lawsuit is coming. I've been speaking with the farm over the last 48 hours. There's a couple of administrative hurdles that must be crossed, but they have gained the support of a huge legal agency that assists people who are being attacked by government overreach. I'm not at liberty to announce that yet. I will be announcing it with Katie when she comes on the show in the next 24 hours or so to discuss exactly what's going on. This is going to be huge because if the neighbors have cause for a lawsuit, Universal Ostrich Farms certainly does as well, perhaps times 10. So that's where we are. That is imminent. They know it's coming. I know it's coming. You know it's coming. And there's going to be justice for Universal Ostrich Farms, for Katie and Karen, her mom. And there's going to be accountability from the CFIA, from the RCMP, from the Mark Carney Liberal government. It's coming. You better believe it is. I want to show this clip from the other week. And this, I think, is another reason for going after the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, because they just don't know when to quit. Of course, they tried to fine the farm $10,000. Remember that? Because they allegedly didn't inform them about sickness on the farm. That was all a lie. The farm responded to that allegation immediately, putting the information, the evidence to the contrary on their Facebook page. Katie did that instantly. They proved the CFIA wrong. A Canada Agricultural Tribunal overtook that. Overturned that, excuse me, that's the word I'm looking. They overturned that fine of $10,000 and said the CFIA was the one at fault throughout this whole process because they did not communicate in the appropriate manner. So that opened the door for legal action. And as Katie says in that Facebook post, it's coming. It's already happened from the neighbors. It's coming from the farm. Let's listen to this. I saw an article and I immediately sent it to Katie. And when I first read the article, I thought, oh, this must be a parody. I thought it's like something out of The Onion, if you know that parody newspaper, because it was the CFIA crying the blues, whining and bitching about all the harassment they've received. And given the fact, okay, if some of these things are true, then I would be the first one to condemn them. And as no, there should be no harassment at all. But it strikes me as passing strange that an organization that brutally occupied a farm, harassed and meted out cruelty to its animals, refused to feed them at times, watched one die before its eyes, then massacred hundreds of them on a rainy night and into the wee small hours of the morning, and finishing some of them off, and then evacuated the farm in the most ungodly, irregular, and unlawful way possible. Now they expect people to feel sorry for them? Yeah. I was just absolutely gobsmacked when I read the article, and I jokingly put it out, is this a parody or not? But no, it wasn't. What was your first reaction to that, Katie?
I was beside myself. And I posted on that right away. Here they're claiming poverty, and yet the budget came out at the same time of what they've released, only a fraction of it. Like Jerry said, we're guaranteed it's way more than 7, close to 10. And we're not going to even see everything. That'll be hidden from us. But so 1,300 jobs that they're trying to cut from CFIA now, and closing research centers. But and then saying that they're also fearful. They had to relocate one of their employees. So they had to relocate the family due to a sexual harassment or abuse claim that somebody was threatening. But again, so the person, so first of all, the CFIA employee is anonymous, making the statements. There's been no proof. Nobody has been brought to justice for if they would have had to actually take somebody, a family, and relocate them. I would expect that we would have saw someone getting arrested, just like we did already. That would have been public knowledge. That would have been on mainstream media, but of course that's not going to be. And so they have enough experiences as well, and to protect their rights and to protect their violation of their rights and abuse and threats. But when it came down to us, we've had absolutely zero protection and zero awareness brought to the situations that we've been put under the attack of haters and people driving by and threats from our family. I'm beside myself that they can plead poverty, and they can also plead that they're still being attacked, and pour them when we're out in the open public. We've exposed ourselves for over a year, haven't hidden anything, and they remain anonymous. I don't think anonymous should be allowed, especially when it's violating other people's charter of rights. And it definitely sideswiped that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerry, CFIA should count itself damn lucky that some of its members aren't in jail today. Are they stretching their point a little far by suggesting we should feel sorry for them?
I think your next state tip, David, should be to ask who the crisis management team is they've hired. This is all bullshit comms. They're trying to flip the pancake over, and they can't. And I would be shocked if they haven't hired somebody from outside to come in and say, okay, we've got a crisis here. What do we need to do? And this is probably the first salvo in their comms with this, ridiculous assertion.
That one, of course, was former Agriculture and Agri-Food Minister Jerry Ritz, who was on the program with me that day and has been on the program several times talking about this issue. So why is a lawsuit in order? You heard it. You heard it there. So many reasons. The CFIA, in their arrogance, was actually trying to mete out some more punishment, but they're the ones potentially who could get punished big time in this potential lawsuit, which I tell you is going to be coming down very, very shortly. We'll be on top of that on this station, and I will be writing about that on Substack and other of the organs, the media organs I write for. This, again, is going to be huge, seminal, groundbreaking, monumental news, because this is something that doesn't happen all the time in Canada. And that's farmers or ordinary average Canadians not taking it anymore, fighting back against injustice, fighting back against government overreach, and demanding their constitutional rights. And that's what Katie and her mom are going to do here. Anyway, want to get to my next story here. I always enjoy having Scott Morefield on the show. Scott is a fantastic political commentator, and Scott and I worked together at the Daily Caller. Scott always got higher ratings than I did. I don't hold that against him. He had an instinctive ability to know what the audience wanted in stories. And of course, in those days, I don't know, I could do this as a Canadian those days. This is before Bill C-18 and the ridiculous restrictions now against putting media on social media, on Facebook, for instance. We were still allowed to do that. And the more views you got, the more your story was worth to you. So when you had millions of people looking at your story, it could be potentially very profitable. And I had a hell of a time working at the Daily Caller for the 5 or 6 years I was there. And Scott was a valued friend. Here we are we talked this week about the Epstein files. We talked about potential war in Iraq. We talked about Israel. But here I am, I'm asking him about, is a third party necessary in the United States? Is this something would this be a good thing for democracy, or would this just hurt the Republican Party and help the Democrats?
I'll tell you what, I'm still on the Trump train in the sense that I want him to do well and I'm supporting him. and all that, because I think that we would have been way worse with Kamala there, obviously, in a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
ways.
yeah.
So I'm still there. I'm mad, but I'm there. World War III would kind of push the deal. Okay. I don't know that I'll still be on the Trump train if we go into World War III. So I don't know what he's thinking, because I supported Trump. I wrote a column at Breitbart in 2015 laying out the key pillars of Trumpism, how important these things were. And the number one thing is non-intervention. It's freaking non-intervention. So what are we doing? Because this isn't Trumpism. This isn't MAGA. And why won't people say that? I don't get it.
Well, that sort of leads me to my penultimate question. And people like to talk about the Republicans and Democrats increasingly being a uniparty, just as in Canada, the Liberals and the Conservatives are very much a uniparty on so many issues. And so there's been some talk about a third party. There's been some talk about perhaps people like Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna or Marjorie Taylor Greene developing a third party. Now, I have a sense of history. I know you do too. This has not gone well for Republicans in the past. I think of 1912, when Theodore Roosevelt ran as a progressive / bull moose party against Woodrow Wilson, and he came in second, but Wilson won. And I think of 1992 and 1996, Ross Perot ran against Bill Clinton, and once again, he was basically responsible for the Republicans losing that. Clinton did not get over 50% of the vote in either of those elections, but he won because the center right was splintered. Yeah. So, I am not an advocate of a third party, but I put the question out there. Are we reaching a point of no return where it might be an option now? Maybe it's not 1912 or 1992 anymore. It's 2026. Maybe it is an option. What are your thoughts on it? Because I'm with you. I'm still supporting Donald Trump and the administration as long as I possibly can. It's like my hand is out of the water. But I am not I'm certainly never going to say, okay, maybe the Democrats could do a better job. I know they do a worse job. They certainly will, and they certainly have. Wondering if this two-party system is functional anymore.
Yeah, it's sad because we're kind of stuck in it. Like, we don't have a parliamentary system or a way to really make it work. So all we would do, unless there was a really significant Democrat third party that also was super competitive. So if you had like 4 parties, maybe something like that. But if we're the only one doing it, it's going to kill us. So I think that the way to do it is to try to Republicans from within. So that's why the primary with Massey is super important. Get people in there who are free thinkers, really, who are willing to push back on some of this stuff. And I think that's the way to go. I don't know. I just feel like the third parties basically keep Republicans from getting elected at all. And I understand, gosh, Republicans suck. Most Republicans really suck, but Democrats are communists. Okay. So, it's like, do we vote for suck or do we vote for communism? At least the Republicans aren't going to take our guns. If you see what's happened in Virginia, Glenn Youngkin was kind of milquetoast a little bit. He was not bad, but he wasn't the greatest. He wasn't somebody that I would be thinking, man, what a great governor. But guess what? You see what worse is. We've seen what worse is. I mean, the white witch is there basically turning Virginia into a communist state. And they're like 2 steps away from full-on gun confiscation at this point. So we've seen what happens. So I think you don't break parties, the Elon Musk America Party thing. Now, what I'd like to see, actually, to your question, is I would love to see the Republicans turn into more of a populist party, like a populist America First style party. But that has to be done with the Republican Party, like the Republican Party transform, which it kind of has. I mean, Trump has done a lot of that. He's transformed on a lot of issues in a lot of good ways. So, on trade, we're a lot better on trade than we used to be. I don't know how you feel about that, but we're a lot better on trade than we used to be. With the whole free trade at any cost, no reciprocal stuff. We've gone away from globalism in a lot of ways, which is good. But we need the non-intervention. That's a key component. Without the three, I mean, the basic components of MAGA, you know, you don't have MAGA. You just have part of it. So, but we need a populist party that builds on what Trump brought, that expands on it, you know, and just basically includes more, enough people to beat the Democrats. So, you know, if we could get 55% logged on to what the agenda is, that would be amazing. But I don't know that I see it happening anytime too soon, but we're a lot further along than we were 10 years ago.
And interesting how Scott talks about the pillars of this new Republican Party. It's very similar to the way William F. Buckley Jr. used to describe the pillars of conservatism. He said fiscal conservative, social conservatism, and pro-defense, anti-communist foreign policy. It was very simple in the Cold War days. Very simple to understand what was necessary. Not so simple today. It's very, very complicated. But I think we need people like Scott Morefield, yes, and myself, who are not in the pockets of the party or its leadership, who are not afraid to criticize, not afraid to suggest, not afraid to say there's a better way. And we need to do that in Canada as much as we need to do it in the United States. It doesn't mean you throw out the Conservative Party. It doesn't mean you throw out the Republican Party and Donald Trump. It means you work from within to reform to get better. And this is why I shake my head at people who say, you know, we just have to get rid of everything. Well, that's not going to happen right now. We need to get rid of Mark Carney in Canada before it's too late. And barring that, I really believe Alberta will not be with us for much longer. By the way, incredible poll this week saying that the Liberals and the Conservatives are almost neck and neck in Alberta. I don't believe that for a minute. No, I don't. Now, let's just quickly have a look at my ex. I totally forgot to do that because I was having too much fun. That's what happens sometimes, eh? Yeah. Let's have a look here. This is interesting. Ezra Levant comments, why are you blaming OpenAI? Your woke RCMP went to the home of that murderer dozens of times, did nothing. He's talking, of course, about Tumbler Ridge. And for the same reason, OpenAI did nothing. They were afraid of being called transphobic. And of course, this is a huge part of this story. Yeah, and that of course is our Minister of Artificial Intelligence. I like Marty up north's comment here. Last week, Alberta Premier Daniel Smith said that if you're going to call someone a Nazi, you better be referring to the Holocaust. This was regarding comments made by Notley and Lakuzak. This is a great first step, but politicians need to go farther. Mark Carney needs to call out David Eby for referring to Albertans collecting signatures for a petition as traitors. We are not. The independence petition is a citizen-led initiative that is legal, constitutional, moral, democratic, transparent, and peaceful. So, things to keep your eyes on next week. The continuing efforts by the forces of Alberta independence to get support for the referendum. I have asked to have Premier Daniel Smith on the program to talk about the continuing and big ambiguity over the pipeline, whether one's actually going to get built, whether Mark Carney is serious about building one. I don't believe he is. I'm going to put that question to Danielle. And I want to ask her as well about her recent initiative to take immigration away from the federal government and give it to Albertans. Obviously, this is about an element, a degree of Alberta sovereignty without Alberta independence. I know what she's doing. I think it's very clever. I think she's a very clever woman and a very smart politician. I hope she's as principled as I've always given her credit for being. But this is a very, very interesting road ahead for the province. We'll continue to keep our eyes on the Epstein files, of course, because there's more information coming out this week, which neither Democratic or Republican elites really want to talk about. It's like, that's ancient history. Mainstream media doesn't want to talk about it at all. Ancient history. We're going to continue to talk about it. And we're going to bring you the breaking news from Universal Ostrich Farms when it happens. And they have promised to do that. And it's going to happen. And it's going to be a huge day for Canada, for Canadians, for farmers, for agriculture, for democracy when that happens, when that lawsuit is dropped. And it's going to be dropped soon. So thank you all for watching. And I just got to show you the merchandise before I say adieu for now.
Who cares?
Some great merchandise there. I encourage you. I'm drinking from one of those pieces of merchandise right now. It's just, I'm in nobody's pocket. That's me. I want to thank you for watching today, and I hope you have a wonderful Sunday wherever you are, and you've got time to go to church or your house of worship, wherever that might be. Thank you for being a part of KRAYDEN'S Right. Thank you for supporting the show. Please subscribe if you can. Please resubscribe if you must, and share this program and this channel with your friends and family. It would, and it is, so appreciated. We love you. God bless. God keep you. And we'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I'm going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David KRAYDEN, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.